Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is it was supposed to be simple in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 41, Day of Reckoning. Ria had to admit, she hadn't had this much fun in years. Not only was she getting to destroy the last bastion of the monsters that slaughtered her people, but she kept running into these giant, metallic golems, presumably those titanous things Byleth referred to earlier, and something about these metal behemoths made them downright delightful to smash apart. It was annoying that she had to take any Agarthan that surrendered alive, but for everyone that did, there were 5 that didn't, so she was still enjoying herself. I'm pretty sure a holy woman shouldn't be cackling while her hands are caked in brains, Gerald commented, prompting Ria to pause and glance at her hands. These aren't brains. I think. They're the organs of the Titaness, yes, but I do not think it counts when the being is artificial. I saw you punch through a guy's skull. The body's right over there, he pointed out, gesturing towards a corpse missing the upper half of its head. Yes, well, my sword got stuck in the ribs of another one of these guys. Geralt, I have had 1,000 years of rage built up and this is the first time I've let it loose. Don't ruin it for me. Nearby, Alois and Shamir were a bit less enthusiastic about the current proceedings. Hey Shamir, do you think Catherine would lose that crush of hers on Lady Ria if she saw her like this? Alois, she'd propose to her on the spot, Shamir replied, well aware of her partner's tastes. Huh. Well, that'd certainly make for a bloody proposal. What was the pun there? Shamir asked as she loosed an arrow into an Agarthan's throat. There wasn't. This is hardly a joking matter, Alois said with a frown, take it from someone married, you'll lose your chance if you just wait. Yeah, I'm not doing this right now. Thankfully for her, she had something else to focus on as Byleth came running up to and past them. Hey, the city is exploding, we need to go. Well, would you look at that, a convenient excuse, Shamir muttered before beginning to run as well, leaving Alois to scramble as he tried not to get left behind. Good news, Ria. We killed Thales and Edelgard actually got him to beg a bit. Byleth said, trying not to focus on how blood-soaked Ria was. Ria took a deep breath. I wish I was there to see it, but thank you Emperor Edelgard. I didn't do it for you, but regardless, you are welcome. Byleth beamed, glancing between them. I'm glad you two are getting along. Ria and Edelgard paused, looking at her for a moment, before deciding to just leave their own issues for later and follow Byleth, along with the rest of the retreating coalition's forces and whatever prisoners they had taken, back out of Shamhala. Whatever mysteries were in the city would remain a mystery for now as explosions rocked it, collapsing the cavern as they evacuated. Guess I'm not going to be finding anything out soon, Shay muttered with a huff, a tinge of disappointment hitting her while Arvel watched the crumbling city with a deep frown. We can always attempt to clear the rubble at a future date, Hubert noted, keeping an eye on the cavern in case anything else happened. If nothing else, there are probably more Agarthans around given that evacuation order. But for now, we won. Byleth declared, bringing up a cheer while the soldiers got some well-deserved rest. Bily. Edie. There you two are. Dorothea shouted as she approached the two, before pulling the two into a hug. I was so worried about all of you when the explosions started happening. Especially when they started telling the Mage Corps to start evacuating. Ah, yeah, we're okay. Byleth replied, a smile on her face. Things might have gone a bit differently than I expected, but everyone made it out okay. Scanning the area around them, she saw that everyone really was okay. Caspar and Balthus were boasting about their battles, while Bernadetta was squeaking in embarrassment thanks to Ferdinand and Petra declaring her a war hero for taking out an enemy general. Definitely didn't help that Yuri joined in to tease her. Linhard seemed to be enjoying a nap in the grass despite all the yelling, while Happy fed a morose Constance some snacks to celebrate. Everyone was okay, they would all be okay. Yes, we'll need to have a proper celebration once we return, Edelgard said as she smiled. Well, I'm glad to see you're in a good mood, Edie. Ah, yes, well. Edelgard cleared her throat. Perhaps there is some merit to what you and I discussed before. Oh well, we definitely have something to look forward to back at Inver. What's going on? Byleth asked, a bit confused. Oh, don't worry Bailey, think of it as a nice surprise. Dorothea said, before giving Byleth a kiss on the cheek. Feeling her blush return, Byleth tried to calm herself as Dorothea pulled Edelgard away to talk about something. Though as happy as she felt, Byleth felt something odd. For some reason, it felt like her chest was thumping. So, what helped change your mind, Edie? Well, I suppose I feel like I can afford myself more happiness, Edelgard responded, clearing her throat again. Well, don't worry, Bailey will definitely make you happy. A thud from behind caught their attention. Turning around, the two felt their eyes widen in shock at the sight of Byleth collapsed on the ground, unconscious. I'm telling you, I'm okay, Byleth argued as she tried to gently push Rhea away from her. Her argument might have had more weight to it if she wasn't in an infirmary bed at the palace. And if it was still the same day as the assault on Shamhala. Child, you passed out in front of us and were unconscious for a day, you are not okay, Rhea fussed as she checked on Byleth. Just let her examine you already, it'll do both our hearts good, Geralt said, trying to stay calm as he leaned against a wall, his arms crossed and his hands clenched on the fabric of his shirt. Not that I'm complaining, but I am the physician, and this is my office, Manuela noted, a bit amused that her former boss was fussing over someone so much despite the natural concern she felt for her patient. My apologies Manuela, I just wish to check myself. And the sooner we get this done, the sooner we can get ready to leave, Geralt added. Geralt, I'm not leaving the Empire right after we beat the Agarthans. Byleth argued, frowning at her dad, before she looked at Rhea, and we need to talk about what you did too. It was a miracle of the goddess, Rhea stated. Rhea, you. The Immaculate One appeared and brought you to Inver, thereby showing the goddess truly does favor you, she stated, her expression unchanging. She's not wrong about me favoring you, Suthies added, floating close to Byleth and keeping a careful eye on her. She wasn't sure what happened, but anything that hurt her child was her concern. We should discuss that at some point, Edelgard added, finally speaking up from her place in the infirmary, standing a little awkwardly near one of the beds as she averted her eyes from the examination. A dragon flying over the city isn't something people expect to see. It was a sign of divinity. Should I assume that Adrestia is favored by the goddess then? Rhea paused, thinking of a decent way to respond. You should pray to the goddess for answers. Matters of religion aside, we do still have much to discuss. See? Edelgard agrees with me, Byleth said, not noticing Rhea frown as she moved a hand over her chest. Besides, Petra's still here so we should talk to her too, and we still haven't gone to the opera house yet. Manuela, Edelgard, can you leave the room? Rhea suddenly asked. Is something wrong? Manuela asked, her amusement leaving. It's something personal. Manuela is a skilled healer, I'm sure she can dash. This is not up for debate. Leave. Now, Rhea ordered, cutting off Edelgard and making her stiffen. Hey, Rhea, come on, there's no need to talk like that, Byleth said, starting to get worried. Manuela, let's give them some space, Edelgard decided, before turning to leave. Despite her frown, Manuela got up to leave as well. All right, what's going on? Geralt asked once it was just them in the room. Byleth, do you feel any pain in your chest? No. She answered, frowning in some confusion. I felt a bit nauseous earlier, but it passed. Have you felt any other forms of illness recently? I had a bit of a cough. Though that's because I took a nap outside, I'm sure. Rhea, can you get to the point? Geralt asked, his worry growing. As I was examining her, I noticed something off. I think your creststone might be breaking. What? Suthies shouted, immediately shooting up from where she'd been floating. Excuse me? Byleth asked, not fully understanding what that meant. There were cracks all over the creststone in your chest. I don't know how that happened, something like that shouldn't be possible, and, I don't know what that means. Well, shouldn't it just heal up? I mean, Nabateans can heal from anything after some sleep, right? Our bodies, yes, but, something like this. Can't you replace it with a different stone? Geralt asked, his brow furrowed. No, only the crest of flames is strong enough to breathe life into another, and Mother was the only one to have that crest. Then, what's going to happen if she loses that? Rhea shook her head. It won't happen. We need to head back to the monastery, see how we can fix this. Byleth took in a deep breath, trying to calm herself down despite her growing anxiety. Rhea, I understand where you're coming from, but dash. No you don't. She denied, I've lost too many people already. I can't lose you as well. Kid, please, just listen to her, Geralt requested, we should head back. No, but, I still have to, she trailed off under their worried stares, before taking in another breath. Oh okay, but, can we stay another day or two? I want to make sure everyone is okay. Of course, I'll make sure to handle everything, you just rest, Rhea immediately agreed, standing up. Somehow, the lack of argument actually made Byleth feel more concerned. Do you want me to get you anything, kid? Geralt asked. Some water would be nice, Byleth murmured, getting him to nod before the two left. She could see them start talking the instant they were out the door, their voices low, but, she didn't really want to listen in. You're okay, right? You don't feel anything wrong, right? Suthies questioned as she hovered over Byleth. I'm fine, Suthies. I'm sure everyone is just overreacting. No, you're just underreacting. I just don't know how dash. Suthies looked up at Byleth, a hurried look on her face. This is because of me. What? I sent you so far back in time, the crest stone couldn't handle it. This is all my fault. Suthies, no, you gave me another chance at life. I'm only alive because of you, you're not to blame, Byleth argued. We'll figure something out, okay? Suthies didn't answer. She just looked, scared, and that. I'm sure you will, Edelgard spoke up, getting Byleth to jolt in surprise. Edelgard? When did you come in? After Geralt and Rhea left. I imagine you were too busy talking with the goddess to notice me. Why yeah. So, did you hear all that? Manuela had more decency than me and decided not to listen in as well. Oh, okay, well, that makes things easier, Byleth said, suddenly feeling nervous, seems we're cutting this diplomatic mission short. For now at least, there are more in the future. Why yeah, you know, now that I have you here, just wanted to say that maybe the cottage idea wasn't that great. For me, anyways. Who knows, maybe Dorothea will be up for living with or next to you. Right, I should speak with Dorothea before I leave. It's only right that I tell her I have to go. It really is a shame, I wanted to see her perform, but with how the city is, I don't think that'll be an option. Speaking of, it might be a good idea to reconsider the liaison thing. Byleth. I'm just saying, Dorothea is pretty smart, but she wants to be able to retire and get pampered for the rest of her life. As it stands, I'll have to focus on being the archbishop for a long time, so she probably won't get to do that. Heck, people might take me dating her the wrong way and she'll have to deal with all that, so really it's best she doesn't go to and from the monastery dash. Byleth. Her voice firm, Edelgard interrupted Byleth as she grabbed her hands, forcing her to look at her. For a moment, Byleth couldn't help but stare at the Emperor, before feeling tears well up in her eyes. It's not fair. I just got to meet you all again. Why am I going to lose it all again? Byleth pulled Edelgard into a hug as she began to cry openly, her voice breaking. I don't want to die. Unsure of what to say, Edelgard reached up, and wrapped her arms around her, remaining silent as Byleth cried. Is there something I can do? What? Byleth managed to say, her voice choked with emotion. I have the crest of flames as well, Edelgard replied, moving back slightly so she could meet Byleth's eyes. Is there a way that I could fix this? I don't know. Suthies. The goddess looked nervous, a small frown on her face, before she gave a shrug. I don't know. It could, what would the plan be then? To give you her blood? Do you even know how to perform a blood transfusion? I could ask Manuela. Byleth took a moment, brushing away some of her tears. Maybe I shouldn't. She stiffened as Edelgard suddenly grabbed the sides of her head, forcing her to look into her eyes. Byleth. You have too much that you want to do to allow yourself to die. Giving up the struggle for life is something that I refuse to allow you to do. We are going to use every option, and you are going to live. Byleth felt tears well up in her eyes again, but this time she couldn't help but smile as she wrapped her arms around Edelgard and hugged her as tightly as she could. Hello, Dorothea greeted, as she walked into the infirmary as Byleth was idly chewing on a sliced apple. Oh, Dorothea, how are you? Byleth asked, really hoping her eyes weren't red anymore. I should be asking you that. I mean, you gave everyone a really big scare after you passed out, Dorothea said, walking closer while keeping her arms behind her. Yeah, I have a heart issue. Byleth put on a smile as she waved her hands in front of her. We're already working on seeing how we can fix it, I just have to take it easy. Oh, well, that is certainly good to know. So, do you think you'll be out of bed soon? Maybe? I'm not actually sure how serious it is. I know Rhea and Geralt are worried, and I kind of am too, but maybe it's not that bad. Oh, I hope it isn't, Dorothea said, frowning with some slight worry. Do you want to talk about it? And not really. I'd actually prefer to talk about something else, she requested, before glancing at Dorothea again. Huh? Are you hiding something behind your back? That I am. Her smile quickly returning, Dorothea presented a small box to Byleth. Here, I thought you could use a pick-me-up since Shay cruelly stole your treats last time. Taking it, Byleth opened it to find it full of rather haphazard-looking treats, most of which were spilling from the side. They might not look as pretty as me, but I'm sure you'll enjoy them, Dorothea said, smiling as she sat down. A bit hesitant, Byleth took what she assumed was a macaroon, and bit it, trying not to grimace from how overly sweet and grainy it felt. PFT, wow, that bad huh? And no, they're good, just, might be a good idea if we cooked together next time, Byleth suggested, before finishing off the one she already bit. Well, if you insist on teaching me. Should I be calling you Professor? Byleth paused, not really sure what to think about how that made her feel. So, did anything else happen? Well, Edie has been talking with Lady Rhea quite intensely about something. I don't know the specifics, but I imagine it involves you. Yeah. Grabbing another treat, Byleth held it for a moment. I wanted to tell you about what happened during the raid. Oh. Edelgard and I might have kissed. Oh. Again. Her face immediately went red. Why yes. It was kind of a happy moment, we were both just, and I guess we were both still thinking about what happened that night. No need to say it, Biley, I fully understand. It's almost funny to think she could probably charm the small clothes off anyone if she knew how charming she really was. That was an interesting mental image that Byleth tried not to focus too much on. Why yeah, she's amazing. Have you fallen in love with her even more now? Byleth stiffened, her face immediately going pink. That, I still. Then her face went completely red when Dorothea patted her on the head. I know you still love me too, you've made that very obvious. Why yeah, just, Don't worry, Biley. It might be a bit difficult, what with your positions and all, but I made it quite clear to Edie that I certainly am interested in the idea of something a bit more open. That's an option. As soon as Edie stops being stubborn, Dorothea said, deciding not to mention that she'd brought it up with Edie already. She wouldn't want to fluster Biley too much. Yet. Of course that could open an entirely different problem, since Edie likely has more than a few people interested in her, and I'm sure you have plenty of people charmed as well. Wait, who would be interested in me? Byleth asked, a bit confused. Biley. Come on. I mean, so, you. Why is that a question? Byleth shrugged a little self-consciously. I wasn't sure. I mean, I thought Yuri was interested in me like that, but I was wrong there. Oh. Well, he said he was attracted to me, but he doesn't love me. So, yeah. I suppose that can happen, though you never know. Attraction is usually a starting point to something bigger. That or he just wants to be fuck buddies. Byleth jolted, her face going red as she clutched her chest on reflex at the strange pulse she suddenly felt. Dorothea, please don't joke about that. Ah, sorry. I forgot you said you were having heart trouble. She paused. I didn't, contribute to that, did I? And no, I didn't, this started after the battle today, yesterday, I mean. You and I, being together didn't cause it. Well, just in case, why don't we take it easy for a little while? Or, and maybe doing it more would help. Dorothea giggled. Biley, seriously. Sorry. Don't apologize, just take care of yourself, okay? I want to spend more time with you and it wouldn't be good if your health fails, right? She smiled kindly, before pressing a kiss to Byleth's cheek. So do your best to get better. And if you need, maybe I could play nurse for you later. That would be nice, Byleth squeaked, her face scarlet. That didn't cause you any heart pains, right? And no. I'm good. Okay, I just wanted to check. I might like to tease but I want to make sure it's not going to cause you any problems. Don't worry, I'll make sure to tell you if there's any problems, Byleth said, even if she didn't really want to stop Dorothea doing stuff like that. Leaning forward, Dorothea poked Byleth on the forehead with a pout. I'm serious, okay? You've been through enough so I'd hate to be the reason why things take a turn for the worse for you. You could never make things worse for me. Heh, quite the charmer aren't you, Dorothea teased with a playful smile. You know, it might be too early for me to say I love you, but I look forward to being able to say it. Byleth took in a quick breath, trying to ignore how her chest thumped there. It might be a bit until I'm ready to hear it too. Careful now, you might just give me an excuse to avoid saying it for a long time. That's okay, Byleth replied, smiling back, I'm happy to wait until you're ready. Byleth was eventually allowed back to her room, though she was still requested to take it easy for the day. Which meant she ended up just anxiously pacing back and forth in the room. It wasn't the first time she felt anxious, but whenever she did before she could go out and do something. Tend to her garden, or spar with Balthus. Now, however, she knew, objectively, that she should be taking it easy. Suddenly collapsing, feeling nauseous, and feeling a strange thumping in her chest were all probably bad signs, but she just wasn't the type. She liked doing things. Even her favorite pastime to relax with was fishing. Which, yes, wasn't a very active hobby, a lot of it was spent waiting, but that was soothing. And there was a feeling of accomplishment whenever she managed to catch a neat fish. She just enjoyed feeling like she was accomplishing something. Gardening and fishing had tangible rewards for success, sparring and training improved her body, waiting around was just aggravating. Especially since everyone was here as well. She finally managed to have all the Black Eagles in one location and she couldn't even do anything with them, well, most of the Black Eagles anyways. The rest of the students hadn't joined the Black Eagles this time. Even so, they'd still be her students, honorary Black Eagles to her. Repeating Black Eagles all the time didn't seem necessary, but she shouldn't just say Eagles. Beagles. I really am bored, she murmured to herself. I noticed. She stiffened slightly at Suthi's voice, before frowning at the languid goddess, floating on her belly in the air. What? Do you expect me to entertain you now? Shall I entrance your mind with the traditional dances of Xanadu? Byleth blinked. You know traditional dances? Of course I do, I invented most of them. She frowned down at herself. Though I suppose I haven't practiced in this current form of mine, and at least a few of them will not be appropriate as a result. I'm concerned by that statement. Do not think about it, she instructed, waving a hand dismissively, it is not as though I plan to dance for your amusement anyway. Why bring it up then? She paused. You're also bored, aren't you? No, merely frustrated by your incessant pacing. And this situation as a whole, I suppose. Suthi's huffed. This should be a joyous time, a victory over an age-old foe, and yet, she sighed, before shooting Byleth a look. Don't apologize. I already consider this issue a fault of mine, not yours. Byleth closed her mouth, before letting out a small sigh of her own as she sat on her stupidly comfy bed. I know. I don't think you should blame yourself, not when I was the one who, at the goddess's irritated look, she decided to change what she was about to say. I was hoping this would be more of a victory than it turned out to be. I wanted to celebrate with everyone, not be carted back to the palace because I collapsed. Actually, wait, is everyone even back yet? Hrym is pretty far from here. As far as I'm aware, only your father and your paramours are here. Though I doubt everyone else will be gone for long. Mr. Broody is definitely going to be rushing back with how a dragon took the emperor away. Okay, well, I guess I can't hang out with anyone right now then anyways. Byleth sighed. Right. We should at least start planning things going forward. We need to start with sending a message to the Kingdom and Alliance to delay our travels there, probably say something that I came down with illness or something and need to recover. The Kingdom will probably believe that, but the Alliance not so much, Suthies pointed out, especially since it's entirely possible someone from the neighboring territories might have seen Rhea in her draconic form. Yeah, but I doubt they'll be willing to challenge the church on the Archbishop being sick. I should have done this earlier, but sending Geralt into the Alliance to find Leonie would be a good idea. I don't know if she's a mercenary or not, but she'll probably be willing to come to the church either way. I probably don't have to worry about Lysithea since Edelgard said she would send her a letter. She frowned. Maybe it could help if I invited her over? Maybe, if I ask Marianne to visit with Lysithea, it could be a show of good faith. I'm friends with Marianne, and by asking for 2 heirs of the great houses to show up, I'm showing equal favor, right? Suthies raised an eyebrow. I do not think you need that much of an excuse to see your friend again. MFH, I am still thinking of the political situation, Suthies. Even if it would be nice to see her again, should I invite someone from the Kingdom? It might be a bad idea to not invite them if I'm inviting someone from the Alliance. One of your students was a lion, was he not? Yes, but I don't know how exactly it would look to invite the son of a random knight to the church. Byleth sighed again, annoyed at politics. Inviting Ro wouldn't even work since he'd just bring Gwendol instead of Ash. Might just be a good idea to tell Dimitri that the Kingdom is free to send a delegate to talk about changing the travel date. It at least means you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, as for what else to talk about, if the stone is breaking, I do need to keep that in mind. Guess I shouldn't use your powers that freely. I suppose so, it would help if we knew just why your powers changed and if they could be affected further. Well, they probably changed because of the crest stone cracking, right? Byleth said, taking a guess. It might not be strong enough for me to reverse time, hence why I can only stop it now. That could be it. It's possible that the time you can stop might shorten as well if it cracks first. Suthies sighed. There has to be a way to fix this. Maybe. Edelgard offered to help, and I know Rhea is going to try her best. Byleth's brow furrowed in thought. Hey, Suthies, do you think Indek might know anything about what's happening to me? Perhaps. I do not see how much help that will be though, given that I have no idea where Indek or Mikul are. Oh, right, you weren't there for that. I met Indek, he was at a lake in the Kingdom. What? Yeah, Leonie wanted to go there for some kind of legendary bow, and, I think the lake was named after a fish. She frowned in thought, before noticing Suthies was staring at her. What? You knew where the immovable was this entire time? Is that bad? No, I just find myself bewildered by your sense of priorities. Still, I suppose this is for the best. She smiled. Congratulations, Byleth, you'll get to continue on your tour. Oh, yay. She didn't exactly know why, but that news was good news. Chapter 42, Last Day in the Empire. Byleth took a slow breath to steady herself. Slow breathing was helpful for keeping calm, she knew that, yet it didn't prevent all the anxiety she felt. The anxiety that she'd been feeling since she learned about her heart troubles, which had been reignited by the fact that apparently destroying an evil cult hidden within HRYM was cause for celebration. And yes, she did understand that eliminating the threat of the Agarthans was a big deal. Of course she did. She just wished she didn't have to go to a gala because of it. It really didn't help that she had to wear a big fancy headpiece and fancy dress as well, as people came up to her not only asking for her blessing, but also prayed towards her. And she didn't even have Rhea to deflect any of them because she'd decided to go to a bar instead, apparently needing a night to herself. "May the goddess grace you," she said to yet another minor noble who was bowing deeply to her, who thanked her in return as they backed away. "I really can't do this." "Come now, Lady Byleth, you're doing great," Constance cheered, a smile on her face since this whole production was allowing her to make connections with nobles as well. "I'm holding on by a thread. Goddess, I don't know how I would be doing this in the other time. Probably horribly. Hell, this was mainly just talking with people, she had no idea how she'd be ruling 3 nations at the same time as well. Honestly, whoever thought it was a smart idea, in this time or any other time, really had no idea how little Byleth really knew. She didn't even know the church was a thing before the academy. That wasn't an exaggeration. She'd never once heard of Ceros and hardly knew anything about the countries her dad brought her through. If you asked her if the Alliance was part of the Empire, she probably would have said yes. Granted, that was partially because Geralt didn't really like staying in one place, and was actively keeping information about the church away from her, but still. At least if she had sided with Edelgard last time, then Byleth probably wouldn't have been left in charge of an entire continent. Would Dimitri or Claude help her rule Fodlan if she had chosen their classes? Dimitri, he probably would have helped, if he was more mentally stable than he had been. Though she wasn't sure how good of a king he'd be, especially since he apparently made Miklan a commander. Claude, on the other hand, she vaguely remembered him helping the resistance in the fight against the Empire, but she knew even less about him than she did Dimitri, and he always seemed like he had his own agenda. Would he have left her to run things on her own? No, that wouldn't make sense, that would be stupid of him. Though before her thoughts could continue, she heard someone approaching her. Putting on a practiced smile, she looked up, only for it to turn into a genuine smile once she saw Edelgard standing before her. "Greetings, Emperor Edelgard," Byleth greeted as she stood up from her chair. "Good evening, Lady Byleth. I trust you're enjoying yourself." "About as much as I can have sitting in one place at a gala while people try to show off how pious they are for me," Byleth complained, quite happy that, thanks to the noise of the gala, and just general proprietary, no one could hear her do so. "Though I suppose I should be thankful that Rhea insisted I take it easy for my health, since it means I won't have to worry about people I don't know asking me to dance. If only I were so lucky, but noble obligations can't be ignored just yet." "At least no one will bother us while we talk," Byleth said, though she glanced around to check that none of the minor nobles there were approaching them. Thankfully, they seemed to know to keep their distance while the Emperor and Archbishop talked, so she turned her attention back to Edelgard with a smile. "We can just stay here for as long as you want." "Well, it's not as though I dislike dancing," Edelgard mentioned, meeting Byleth's eyes as she spoke. "In that case, may I ask for a dance?" Only for Constance to cut in, completely misreading what she was intending. "Ah, Constance." Edelgard sighed. "Well, I suppose I did intend to talk with you as well." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Constance said, smiling as she nodded at Byleth before stepping forward to head to the dance floor with Edelgard. "Have fun," Byleth said, a bit amused. Though now she didn't have anyone to talk to, she wished Dorothea was here, yet for some reason she wasn't. Though it probably wouldn't look appropriate if she was here since Byleth would probably kiss her. Sighing, Byleth looked around to see who was there, before she noticed a familiar group of people. "Hello everyone," Byleth called out as she approached the group. "Queen Petra, I hope you are enjoying the ball. I must admit, it is certainly less festive than celebrations back in Brigid." Petra replied as she nodded at the Archbishop. It was understandable that she thought so, since most of the nobles at the gala were giving her and her attendants a wide berth. Thankfully, she still had company. "Why yeah, but it's not that bad. At least we don't have to dance," Bernadetta added, a smile on her face as she shifted a bit anxiously. Yes, and the only loud mouth we have to deal with is Casper, Linhard muttered, before he let out a yawn. Also, don't think I forgot about that promise you made to me. Hey, come on Lin, you could at least say that a bit nicer. Casper complained as he paused in eating some fancy dish Byleth didn't recognize. Don't worry Casper, it's okay. And as for what we talked about, Linhard, glancing around, Byleth noticed Petra still had a dagger at her side. Excuse me, Queen Petra, may I borrow that? Quirking an eyebrow, Petra pulled out her dagger and handed it to Byleth. Thank you. Smiling in response, Byleth reached up and cut off a lock of her hair before handing it to Linhard. Oh, thank you, Linhard said, taking the lock of hair. I don't have any vials on me. That's annoying. Ah, well I can always give you another sample later, Byleth offered, before glancing back at Petra who seemed shocked that she had cut her hair there. Thank you for letting me use this, and Queen Petra, I would like to apologize for not being able to keep that promise I made during this stay. Though if I have a chance in the future I will. You are speaking of, yes, your promise to be dueling, yes, I am remembering now, she replied while taking the dagger back, openly bewildered, before leaning towards Bernadetta, is this normal? No, not really. Byleth. Bernadetta spoke up, a little hesitantly. Yes Bernie. Don't give people your hair. Oh, well, it's just Linhard, right? Byleth, that's really not the point. Please don't give people your hair, she repeated, a little more firmly, which made Byleth blink. Oh, okay. Well it was certainly a surprise to hear Bernadetta sound so firm. Well, anyways, you're going to be leaving, right? Casper asked, looking at Byleth. Yes. It's nothing serious, but Ria wants me to return to the monastery to rest for a bit. It's a shame we have to call this visit short though. Well you can always come back, right? Oh, or I guess we can visit. Wait, are we going to have to go back to the academy when it opens up again? Casper asked as he glanced at his friends. On the one hand I'd have to deal with classes, but on the other hand I wouldn't have to do noble stuff and I can study her crest more. Linhard mused. I am not certain I can go if the academy were open, but I shall do my best to visit, Petra stated with a firm nod. Why yeah, I might not have liked the academy at first, but it'd be nice to see everyone there. Bernadetta added, before blanching, and not that the monastery is bad. Byleth took in a deep breath, before giving everyone a wide, happy smile. I'll welcome you all with open arms when you come. Good evening everyone. And then she stiffened slightly at the loud voice behind her, before relaxing when she realized it was just Ferdinand. It does my heart good to see my fellow Eagles spending time together like this. And with the Archbishop as well. He smiled over at Byleth. How are you enjoying this grand gala we've put on, Lady Byleth? It is, after all, a celebration of everyone's amazing prowess against those who slithered in the dark. I'm enjoying it well enough, Duke Ferdinand, she replied quite primly and properly, though her smile was genuine at seeing how happy he was. It's been a very nice time so far. Excellent. Then, if I may, could I have your first dance, he asked with an admittedly charming smile while offering his hand. Well, I suppose I have no reason to say no, Byleth replied, taking his offered hand so he could lead her to the dance floor as she bid farewell to her friends. I must say, I am glad to see you're in better health, Ferdinand commented as the two began to dance. It was quite the surprise to hear that you collapsed. Though I imagine most people will be more focused on the dragon that had appeared. Byleth tried not to wince at the reminder of Ria's reaction. Well, yes that would certainly be a surprise to most. Though the goddess does work in mysterious ways. That she does. And it certainly goes to show how much she favors you, and I suppose by extension Edelgard as she had supposedly written on her as well. Written was certainly a word for it. Not that Ria had offered to let Edelgard ride on her, apparently Edelgard had decided just to grab onto Ria when she took off. It was a good thing she had a good grip on her when she did, especially since Dorothea got dragged along as well. Even so, Dorothea made it very clear she never wanted to do something like that again. Speaking of Ferdinand, have you seen Dorothea tonight? Ah, well, I heard that she was sadly busy tonight, hence why she is unable to be here. Though I am certain you'll see her later. Hopefully, Byleth muttered, before stiffening slightly as a tingle went up her spine. Glancing off to the side, Byleth saw Edelgard staring at her and Ferdinand as she danced with Constance. For a brief moment, she wondered if she was doing something wrong, before realizing the Emperor's glare was focused at Ferdinand specifically, though he didn't seem to notice. So, you're going to start working on your proposal? Yes, it may take some time, but I am sure Edelgard will sing my praises once I submit it. Well, I don't know about singing, but I'm sure she'll sign off on it. Though maybe it would be useful if you got Hubert's help. What? Hubert? Why would I want his help? He asked with a frown. He is Edelgard's retainer and main attendant, and you're supposed to be her prime minister, right? So it would be good if you two got along, she noted. Besides, wouldn't you two be unstoppable if you worked together? Unstoppable? I suppose we do represent the younger generation in terms of the ministers, and we two are the highest ranked nobility of our group, though he is still Hubert. I don't know if you've interacted with him enough, Lady Eisner, but he's not what I would call a pleasant person. Byleth shook her head. He might seem sinister on the outside, but he has his soft spots. I think you two would work well together, so maybe give it a try. All right, I'll trust your judgment, Lady Eisner. He smiled as they neared the edge of the ballroom, before he released her and bowed while she curtsied, ending their dance together. Though I reserve the right to say I told you so if he poisons me. PFF, if he does, please do tell me at your earliest convenience, Duke Ferdinand. I will happily accept your reprimand in such a situation. He laughed a little at her joke before heading off with one more goodbye, leaving her alone near the dance floor. Lady Eisner, may I have this dance? Byleth blinked before noticing the hand in front of her and the noble it was attached to, someone she didn't recognize, bowing deeply to her. Ah, no, thank you, I was just. Then perhaps I could interest you in a dance, another nobleman offered, and Byleth quickly noticed how there were a lot of noblemen she didn't recognize standing very close to where she was, plainly waiting to see if they had a chance at dancing with the new archbishop. Come now, you are all nobles, are you not? Surely you understand that you shouldn't crowd around someone, Hubert spoke up as he stepped between the group and the archbishop. The group flinched back as he smirked. Surely you wouldn't want to harass her. As they floundered, much like Byleth felt like she was about to, she felt someone tap her shoulder. Glancing behind her, she found Monica, who smiled at her as she gestured for her to follow. A bit confused, she did so, going along with where the redhead was leading her. Ah, Lady Archbishop dash. Apologies, but the Archbishop shall be retiring for the night, she is feeling under the weather, Monica said, cutting in before the noble could finish their request. At her words, Byleth began to lightly cough. She didn't really know why Monica was covering for her like this, but if it meant she didn't have to dance with people she didn't know, she wouldn't complain. Though as they left the ball, Byleth noticed they weren't going to where her room was. A change of clothes was prepared for you. Oh, may I ask why? Because walking around dressed as an archbishop would be quite difficult, don't you think? Monica asked, smiling back at her. Oh, well, it is a bit much, yeah, Byleth muttered before they arrived at a room, where a group of maids were waiting to help her get dressed. And well, she wasn't exactly sure what was going on, but there was a lovely black dress waiting for her, so she didn't argue. Though once she finished getting dressed, she felt Monica brush her hair slightly. I was thinking it might be nice to braid your hair, should you like? Oh, that sounds nice, Byleth murmured, relaxing a bit as the maids left her with Monica. You're a really nice person, Monica. There's no need for flattery. It's not flattery, I'm being sincere. I'm sorry I wasn't able to save you last time. I would have liked having you in my class. I'm glad to have met you now, at least, Monica responded as she finished putting her hair in an over-the-shoulder braid. Now then, we do have a few options for veils if you wish to hide your identity further, as well as a carriage outside waiting for you. A carriage? Ah, am I going somewhere? You did express an interest in going to the opera while you were here, didn't you? Oh, I did, we're going to the opera house. Byleth asked as she took a veil to cover her face. I'm not, but I hope you enjoy it, Monica said while she once again led Byleth around. Soon enough, Byleth found herself in front of a carriage, and Monica opened the door for her to walk in. Byleth nodded to her, smiling at the redhead, before she walked in to sit down. I see you took your time. Only to jolt in surprise when she realized Edelgard was sitting inside as well, wearing her own concealing outfit, albeit red in color. Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were waiting. So you just thought Monica was sending you off to the opera on your own? Well, there's the driver. Byleth's answer earned an unamused stare as the carriage began to move. Well, thanks for giving me an excuse to get out of the gala. I tend not to stay longer than I need to, so need to thank me, Edelgard responded as the two settled into their seats across from each other. Though I must say, you really do need to get used to things like this if you're to be the Archbishop, especially if you don't intend to hide away in the monastery. Don't remind me. At least I don't have to worry about ruling all of Fodlan like they wanted me to last time. Edelgard raised an eyebrow at the often anxious Archbishop. Forgive me for my bluntness, but that doesn't sound like a good idea. Thank you. Byleth exclaimed, surprising Edelgard. I mean, I'm doing better this time around, but that's because I'm actually being taught how to do this stuff and have a good support group, but prior to that, me being the Archbishop was a horrible idea. I did not expect you to be so honest. Look, Edelgard, you need to realize, I didn't know anything about the church prior to joining the academy as a professor. I'm not even exaggerating. I never even heard the word Ceros until I think it was you, or one of the other house leaders said it. What? Byleth nodded as though what she said wasn't completely insane. Yeah, I didn't know anything about the church. I didn't even know there was a church until I met you and the other house leaders. My papa never told me anything about the church or let me learn anything that could have led me to it, and no one else ever brought it up because I think they thought I already knew. Well, that, and I'm pretty sure most of the mercenaries thought I was weird and didn't want to interact with me. You didn't know about the church? Yeah, Papa didn't really take jobs from any religious place, I think. Either that or he didn't have me around if he took a job from them. Most of our jobs were from nobles anyway, which meant I wasn't really there to be part of contract discussion until I was 16. I think. A bit hard to say, I didn't even know what year I was born until Papa showed me Mama's grave. I must admit, I am unsure of whether or not I should be jealous of you. Living in ignorance of the church's crimes, well, there was some appeal to it. I wouldn't be jealous. I lived without knowing some really basic knowledge. I mean, for the longest time I thought Arianrod was the capital of the kingdom because people kept talking about the Silver Maiden, Byleth explained, frowning, and hey, if I was just a mercenary that might seem like a little slip-up, but I can't have slip-ups as the Archbishop. I mean, from what I've read, it'd be a bad idea to mix Fenja and Menja up, right? Ah, yes, that would cause some genuine problems. Nobles can be incredibly prickly about easily made mistakes. You see? And I feel like I still don't know enough about anything, really. For instance, is Ferdinand's mother alive? Edelgard blinked. Unless something happened extremely recently, yes, Ilse von Aegir is still alive. So that's her name. I wasn't sure and it felt awkward to ask. Byleth, let me give you some advice. Ask. Most people wouldn't assume to ask about a disgraced minister's spouse. You did, so asking will be a benefit, not a detriment. It shows you are interested and that you care about that information. Oh. But, I don't want to look like I don't know something basic again. Edelgard leaned back, regarding Byleth curiously. I didn't realize this was a point of insecurity for you. I guess it is. It's not something I think about that much, but it does bother me. I was a professor who barely knew more than her students, and now that I'm the Archbishop, the idea that my ignorance could cause actual problems, it worries me. I see. Then, in the interest of expanding your knowledge, I think I should share some information. For instance, One curious bit of trivia is that Ilse von Aegir, Ferdinand's mother who is currently maintaining their domain, the port of Boromaz, in his absence, is actually the aunt of the current Viscount Fenja. Byleth blinked. Oh, really? Huh, so House Fenja is likely going to side with House Aegir on political issues. Heh. You see? You're not very ignorant at all. You pieced that together very quickly. And, adding on to that, the current Viscount Menja? His sister is Hubert's mother. Oh wow. Though, wait, does that mean they were on Aegir's side, or? They were, though Hubert has been looking into his cousin, the Viscount's son, to see if he'll be more amenable to working for the good of the Empire instead of his house's self-interest. Huh. You know, I never knew Hubert had family outside of his dad. Course, given how he apparently poisoned him last time, that tells me all I need to know about that relationship. Really? He stabbed him this time. An unfortunate consequence of the battle, or so his excuse was. Edelgard smiled faintly. Hubert has always taken his duties as the scion of House Vestra very seriously. That his father was willing to betray every ideal he taught him, I can understand him hating the man. I get that. It's funny, I never realized how having a caring father like my papa could be unusual. But then about everyone I talk to, at least in noble society, has some story of how things just aren't that good for them. Though, I didn't know my situation was unusual in general, so, she laughed a little. I didn't even realize other people had beating hearts until I was 15, I think. It took that long. Byleth shrugged. I wasn't really close enough to other people to notice. I noticed my papa had something noisy in his chest when he hugged me, but I thought that was because he was old. Edelgard tried not to laugh. Really? Because he was old. Sure, he made lots of weird noises that he said were because of age. Like his back cracking and all. Even if it wasn't because of age, I'm pretty sure I would have chalked it up to him being male or something. Sorry, you thought heartbeats were something only men had. To be fair to my younger self, I didn't know what gender was until I was 12. How? Byleth shrugged in response. Whenever Papa talked to me he always just called me kid, and the mercenaries would just say the captain's kid or brat. I only learned because I heard some of the mercenaries asking if I was a guy or a girl, so I asked Papa about it. She shrugged again. I liked girl better, so I went with that. You've certainly led an interesting life. I guess. Most of what I remember is nice, the only problem is that I don't remember most of what I did because I didn't pay attention most of the time. I've moved past that part of my life, and, things might not have gone how I wanted, but this isn't bad. I just hope my visits to the Kingdom and the Alliance go just as well. If it would help, I can use my ties in the Alliance to make things simpler for you when you go there, though I cannot say much about the Kingdom. Oh, that would help a lot. I have Marianne helping me, but I don't want to have to rely entirely on her. I'd feel bad, you know? Oh, and before I forget, Marianne will probably support your ideals. She's had it bad because of her crest. That is good to know. It is a surprise to hear given how meek she appeared at the academy. Yeah, well, you know how things go because of crests. Still, it's nice that she's letting me know some stuff, like how Claude has been asking about me. He has. I think he's curious. I don't know much about Claude's motives, but I do know he gets curious about things and tries to investigate if they interest him. I kind of hope that's all there is to him. Because it will be really inconvenient if he also has some kind of dark and tragic history that compels him to try to kill someone. Edelgard paused. I know what you're referring to with my motives, but what does Dimitri, the tragedy of Duscur? I think so, yeah. I mean, he was really mad at you for some reason, but I think that's because you betrayed everyone. Well, in a sense. Does it count as betrayal when you had your own motives all along? I imagine it would count as a betrayal in his eyes. I believe Thales was responsible for the tragedy, so I have to assume he sought his head as a result, and since I would have been working with him. Yeah, that makes sense. It was either that or he thought you were behind it, and that would be weird. I would have been 13 at the time, I believe, so yes, that would be a bizarre assumption. Yeah. Still, hopefully no grudges will happen this time, Byleth said, before the carriage came to a halt. Oh, that was fast. We have been talking for some time, Edelgard pointed out as the driver opened the door for them. Oh, well, I guess it's easy to lose time when talking with you, Byleth remarked as Edelgard got down first, missing how the Emperor's face turned pink for a moment. She felt thankful that it was dark out while she turned around to offer Byleth a hand to get down. Byleth, in turn, was grateful for the veil as she got off, taking Edelgard's offered hand as they headed into the opera house. Though as they did, Byleth couldn't help but notice that it seemed rather quiet. Is it open? Officially no, but getting a private show is the least I could do given your help against the Agarthans, Edelgard said, a slight smile on her face. Oh, Byleth murmured, feeling her face heat up a bit. Thankfully the walk up to their booth wasn't a long one, and the two soon sat far above the stage in what most would consider the best seat of the house. Are you sure we can't be in the commoner section? It would be closer to the stage. Even if there's no one else around, we still need to keep some modicum of our image. Who knows how much gossip this alone might cause from the actors. Oh, should we go? I don't want to cause you any problems. Edelgard sighed, exasperated. Byleth, let me do something nice for you. You don't need to do anything nice for me. Just being with you is enough. Byleth, please let me do something nice for you, Edelgard repeated in lieu of responding to that, in large part because her face was reddening again. Okay, Byleth agreed, settling into her seat as she looked down at the stage. It might be far away, but their seats did give her a nice view. Especially as the opera began, signaled by the lights focused on the stage. The narrator, who had a rather familiar and melodic voice, began to sing as she set up the events of the play. From what it seemed to be, it was a romantic tale about a noble and the commoner they fell in love with. To most people, were they in this particular situation of being on a date with someone of a higher station, the subject of the opera would be a little on the nose. Byleth was not one of those people, and she was immediately enraptured. Despite never having seen an opera before, she instantly understood why they were so well loved. The costumes, the sets, the acting, and not to mention the singing. Oh, if she wasn't in love with Dorothea before, she was certainly in love now as she saw her perform as both the narrator and commoner. It was actually rather impressive given that the narrator was the commoner looking back on her life, and Dorothea was actually able to make herself seem older and sing more maturely when playing the narrator. All around, the experience was just wonderful. She couldn't help but be drawn in, enjoying every moment of the opera and even imagining herself in the place of the noble that Dorothea was playing alongside. Add in the nice cushions of her seat that made it all too comfortable to sit and watch, the wine provided to drink along with the show, and the fact that she was spending the evening with Edelgard and she could count this as one of the best nights of her life. I think you should cut back on drinking a bit, Edelgard advised when Byleth finished off yet another glass. But it tastes good, Byleth argued as she leaned against the railing to get a better look of the play. I never got to enjoy myself like this before. That's a surprise to hear given how eager you were to let loose. Well, it's true. Closest I got was after the Battle of Eagle and Lion. Though Seath cut that short cause several of the Eagles were still minors and couldn't drink per Empire laws, Byleth said, before pausing. Oh, the Millennium Festival. What about it? We should meet up for it. It'll be a big festive day, so everyone should get together for it. It was actually your idea last time that we should meet up for it. It was? Even though I had planned to declare war. Byleth nodded as she turned to look at Edelgard. I think you were hoping we'd end up siding with you. But, even though we didn't, I still met you that day. You went on your own, hoping to keep that promise. Byleth sighed. Our paths had already separated, that much was clear, but as our blades clashed, I couldn't help but think that maybe I should surrender, or that I should have let you. The past is the past, Edelgard stated, keeping her eyes on the stage. We can't go back to it. I think my presence proves that idea wrong. Does it really? This isn't the past you knew. Even with powers like yours, no one can really go back to what they once knew. Not when they themselves have been changed by what they experienced. I guess so. If you could go back, what would you have done? If I could pick a time to go back to, if I am being honest, I can't imagine what I would do. Objectively, there was nothing I could do to help my family during the insurrection, nor our subsequent torture. I was too young to aid, in a position where I would not be listened to if I tried to speak up. And there is too much that happened that I do not understand, even now. I am not sure when my uncle was replaced by Thales, or how involved my uncle was in the minister's plans. I do not know if he took me to Faerghus to protect me, or if he wanted to use me too. She leaned back, thinking. I suppose, if I could have, I would have tried to see what I could do in Faerghus. Maybe I could have sought out Dimitri and gotten him to help, though that's unlikely. More likely, I would have been used by Faerghus for their own ends, particularly if they left my siblings to die so I would be the heir. Do you think the king at the time would have done that? Maybe. I can't ever know, because that isn't how things went. I dislike considering what could have happened, not when I could instead focus on what is to come. She let out a small sigh, watching the longing aria taking place on the stage. I suppose it would be nice to remember the boy I met in Faerghus. He was my only friend at the time. Really? I never heard you talk about him, Byleth mentioned as she moved back to sit beside Edelgard. I can't imagine I would. As I said, I barely remember anything about him. I think I might have loved him, but I was lonely without my siblings and friends, and I might have just enjoyed having someone close. If there were any feelings there, they were the silly attachments a child has. I wonder if he's even alive. Well, I'm going to Faerghus soon. Maybe later than I expected, with my heart troubles, but I still plan to go. Maybe I could find your friend. Edelgard let out a small little laugh. Byleth, I would be astounded if you managed to find one specific blonde man in all of Faerghus. It may not be as populous as Adrestia, but it is still a large nation. Well, do you remember anything about him? Other than being a blonde noble? Edelgard asked, deciding to play along. Well, if you happen to find someone who has a penchant for giving daggers as gifts and is called D, feel free to tell me. Well, I'll do dash, huh? Byleth tilted her head. You said he gave you a dagger? Yes. She raised an eyebrow. Don't tell me you know him. I'm not sure, it's just, I got a dagger as a gift from King Dimitri. Who is blonde? And his first name starts with D. That has to be a coincidence. Right? Yeah, that would be crazy. Indeed. It's more likely you would see that as a plot twist on the stage than in real life. Haha, yeah. Both of them settled back, watching the opera, before Byleth looked at Edelgard again. Okay, but what if? Edelgard just put her head in her hands. Byleth, please. I don't think I can handle learning that my life is an opera, goddess. I even had an evil uncle. Are evil uncles a common thing in opera? Edelgard dragged her hands down her face, before fixing Byleth with a very serious stare. We can never let Dorothea know. Why? She is already writing an opera of my life, you cannot let her know about this nonsense. Okay. Byleth muttered. It is kinda weird that he was so obsessed with you. Byleth, please. Cease. You never met Claude before, right? You don't have a secret, second childhood friend from Leicester, do you? Edelgard put her head back in her hands and groaned. Or maybe he's Dimitri's secret childhood friend. Byleth, if I kiss you, will you shut up? I might. She did. Chapter 43, Wrapping Things Up. Chapter text. Light streamed into the bedroom, heralding the new morning. The bed's occupant let out a soft groan as she shifted, the glare from the rising sun shining in the exact right way to hit her closed eyes. She mumbled under her breath, her head pounding from her indulgences the previous night. Slowly, she sat up, pressing a hand to her pounding head as her green hair spilled around her head like an ineffective curtain, not even slightly keeping her protected from the morning glare that sent spikes of agony through her skull. She sighed again, pinching the bridge of her nose, before glancing down and frowning as she realized she was entirely naked. And had some curious marks on her skin. Is that a bite mark? The woman mumbled under her breath, taking in the hickeys that covered her upper body, before she looked around and noticed a lump in the bed with her. No. No, no, I didn't. No, I. Rhea took a slow, slightly shaky breath, before taking a hold of the blanket. I really hope this isn't Geralt. It wasn't. It was Manuela, currently curled up with an empty bottle pressed against her face like it was a toy to cuddle with. Rhea let out a slow breath, pressing a hand to her face. Byleth can never know about this. Slowly moving out of the bed, Rhea did her best to remain silent because she really didn't want to awaken Manuela. Nothing against her former employee, but she really needed to keep appearances as the Archbishop. Or, well, former Archbishop. It just occurred to me that I don't have to worry about becoming the Archbishop again after stepping down. It was always something she had done. She might have allowed herself a small break in between taking the position again, but it was always back to being in charge. Did she even need to keep an image now? As the former Archbishop dwelled on these thoughts, Manuela drifted awake, groaning as the sun began to shine on her. Slowly sitting up, she placed a hand on her hand in a practiced motion to ease her hangover with a spell. It wasn't enough to fully get rid of the headache, but she could function at least. Though, as she did, she noticed that for once, the person she had gone to bed with was still there. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised that the former Archbishop has more decency than most people, Manuela muttered, getting Rhea to stiffen. Ah. Good morning, Manuela, Rhea greeted, not looking at her as she got up to get dressed. Morning, Lady Rhea. Have to say, I didn't expect you to be such a big drinker, Manuela teased while she did the same, having a much easier time than normal with finding her clothes since they were in Rhea's guest room rather than Manuela's bedroom. Something the physician found herself grateful for since she hadn't cleaned it in a decent time ago. It was probably bad that she'd managed to make every room she lived in a complete ruin after about a week or so, but it wasn't like she could change her habits at this point. Speaking of habits, she didn't feel like changing, so, I can't say this is the first time I've taken someone to bed with me after a night of drinking, but I wanted to know if this is going to be a one-time thing or... It is. Well, that was blunt. Rhea sighed, frowning slightly as she looked at her own discarded clothes before moving over to get something new to wear from the dresser. She hadn't brought much, not with her haste to get to Byleth, but she at least had a few outfits as needed. I don't see this going any further than a single dalliance between us. I am heading back to the monastery. You are employed by the Emperor. I doubt there is room for a relationship further than that. Harsh, but fair enough, Manuela responded, a little disappointed but not especially surprised. At least she got to enjoy a bit of a view before Rhea got dressed again. My apologies, but it is how things are. Hey, I'm not complaining, you were at least a nice lay. More than I can say about some people, Manuela praised, muttering the second half under her breath and not noticing how Rhea blushed when she heard it anyway. I ask that you not speak of. Turning around, Rhea made an odd noise when she saw Manuela was still naked as she got out of bed, making no effort to cover herself. PFT, come on Lady Rhea, you might be a lady of the cloth, but surely you've seen naked bodies in your time. Just because I have doesn't mean I seek them out. Rhea thought to herself, though she refrained from saying so as she finished getting dressed. If you'll excuse me, I need to make sure preparations for our return to the monastery have finished, Rhea said, nodding to Manuela. If this position should ever prove unsatisfactory, you are welcome to return to the monastery. So much for a one-night thing, Manuela remarked, making Rhea stiffen before she walked out, maybe a bit more hurried than she would normally be. She took a moment to calm herself before she went to check on Byleth, though she did pause as she saw someone leave her successor's room. Ah, Dorothea. Oh, Lady Rhea. The songstress had the decency to look slightly embarrassed when the former Archbishop saw her exit Byleth's room. Good morning. Morning to you as well. I suppose if I am to be fair, I must speak with you as I did the Emperor about the relationship you have with Byleth. Rhea sighed. Though, if I am being honest, she does seem happy with you. Oh, well, thank you. I must admit, I didn't expect to be dating someone related to the Archbishop. She's not merely related to me, she is the Archbishop now. You should make sure to keep that in mind. I know, I will. I understand the difference in our positions. I do not mind if she continues to date you. You seem to be a fine young woman and an adequate partner, and your social standing should have no bearing on that fact. Oh, I have to admit, I'm surprised to hear you say that, Lady Rhea. Rhea let out a small huff. Believe me, I find myself as annoyed by the inane standards of nobility as anyone does. I would have made my own efforts to remove them if not for the stability they provide and the chaos that would likely ensue, though I suppose that just means Byleth is braver than I am. Heh. Well, you don't seem too bad yourself, Lady Rhea. Dorothea smiled at her, before her grin turned a little mischievous. Though you should make sure to let Byleth know if she's about to have a little sibling. I intend to be honest with, what? Dorothea tapped her neck, which was largely covered by her dress. You should wear something with a high neck after having fun like that, if you want to keep people from noticing. Rhea immediately pressed a hand to her neck, feeling her face go red. I am not Byleth's, it wasn't with a man, I didn't. Dorothea giggled. All right, you might not be her mother, but you are definitely related to her. Also, really? I thought you and Captain Gerald had a... I am going to go check on Byleth now. This conversation did not happen, Rhea stated as she promptly brushed past the songstress and entered Byleth's bedroom. Ah, wait. Byleth, are you awake? And decent, the former archbishop inquired, rightly so given the discarded clothes on the floor. She briefly frowned at how messy her successor had left things, before shaking off the obviously hypocritical thought and looking towards the bed. Child, you need to get up. We're planning to leave today, remember? She heard a faint mumbling noise from the bed before a young woman sat up, sleepily brushing at her eyes. Dorothea? Did you need something? Rhea didn't respond for a moment. In part because she wasn't Dorothea, but mostly because the young woman in bed wasn't Byleth. It was Edelgard, who appeared to be wearing a white shirt and little else. For a brief moment, Rhea felt a faint anger at the idea that Byleth's partner had betrayed her, right before she noticed Byleth herself plainly snuggling into the Emperor's side. She looked back at Dorothea, who was very visibly red-faced and trying not to meet her eyes, before looking back at Edelgard, who blinked slowly as she seemed to realize Rhea was right there. The Emperor stared at the former archbishop. The former archbishop stared at the Emperor. Then Byleth made a faint, sleepy noise and cuddled closer to the Emperor. Edelgard glanced at Byleth, then looked at Rhea again. Then, very slowly, and deliberately with a far too smug smirk, leaned down and gave Byleth a kiss on the top of her head. Yes, my love. A sharp crack rang out as Rhea crushed the doorframe beneath her hand. Byleth didn't even slightly stir, aside from the content noise she made at being kissed. Behind her, Dorothea sighed. You could at least say it to her when she's actually awake. So, someone walked in on you, didn't they? Balthus asked, glancing down at Byleth. It was a reasonable guess, considering she had her face in her hands as she sat on her luggage, her face so red that it was going up to her ears. She made a faintly affirmative noise, mixed with a deeply embarrassed whine. Your dad. A slight head shake. Ah, Rhea then. A nod. That's rough. Though hey, at least she knew about you and Dorothea. An embarrassed whine. No, don't tell me it was with someone else. She shook her head, whining again. Wait, so you were still with her? Balthus paused, a thought occurring. Hang on, were you with two people? It was a much more affirmative whine that time. Holy shit, really? Alright, hang on, let me guess, one whine for no, two for yes. So, Yuri. No? Happy? Constance. Seriously? No, hang on, I can figure this out, that small girl. You mean Bernie? Yeah, her. No. Ah, that doesn't count, you didn't whine that time. Damn, alright, I'm out of ideas. Yo, B, it's obviously the Emperor, Happy cut in, both she and Yuri amused at the little game. Constance probably would have stopped Balthus, if it weren't for the shiny sun in the sky. What? No, that can't be it. Balthus muttered, before glancing at Byleth. As long as you don't whine, you can't prove me wrong. HHHH. Well damn. Glad I didn't put money on that. Byleth let out a third sigh, immediately confusing Balthus, before she pushed herself up and brushed herself off. I should say goodbye before Rhea gets us banned from the palace. Is that on the table? Happy asked, a little surprised. I didn't think she was that pissed off. I think the main thing that kept her from setting the palace on fire is that I was still in it. Careful, holy lady, Yuri spoke up, you'll make the guards antsy if you exaggerate too much. Byleth paused, before glancing over at the nearby Imperial guards. I promise she's not actually going to burn the palace down. Probably. Don't include the probably. Sorry. They probably would have believed her apology if she wasn't casually saying it while digging in her luggage for a wrapped package. Though the guards didn't seem particularly reassured, Byleth still headed back inside to track down the eagles and say her goodbyes, which ranged from cheerful to tearful as she made sure to let everyone know she'd be leaving today. Okay, most of them were cheerful, it was only with Bernie that they teared up. Which just left two specific people. Walking into Edelgard's office, she was pleased to see both the Emperor and the songstress inside. Smiling at the pair, she approached them. Hello, I hope I'm not interrupting you two, Byleth greeted. No need to worry, Biley, Edie and I are just hashing out some details. Dorothea said as she got up, and hugged Byleth's arm. Though I'm glad that you didn't run off after how today started. At her comment, both Edelgard and Byleth blushed. Well, I didn't want to just leave without saying anything. I am glad to hear that you were allowed to say goodbye to us. I half expected Lady Rhea to attack me, Edelgard said, even if she would have brought it on herself. Yeah, that would have been bad. Especially since I'm sure Edie would have preferred being attacked by you, Biley, Dorothea teased, her grin widening as she saw both Archbishop and Emperor blush again. Moving on, Edelgard interrupted before she could get embarrassed further. I hope all preparations are finished. Ah, they should be. If we're lucky, Hanuman should have received the message you sent and should be heading to the monastery soon. Other than that, we're just waiting for everything to be packed away, Byleth explained. But, I'm going to miss everyone, but I'm going to really miss you too. Ah, no need to be sad, Biley, Dorothea reassured, pulling her into a hug. You can always come back to visit. Isn't that right, Edie? That she can, and I'll certainly do my best to visit when I can. I must admit, despite how rocky the first meeting was, I've grown fond of you. That's certainly underselling it after yesterday, Dorothea whispered to Byleth. Anne, I'm really fond of the two of you, Byleth replied, far too embarrassed to say she loved them at the moment. I hope we can all meet up again soon, Do? Dorothea asked, smiling slightly as she raised an eyebrow. Ah, yeah, you know, do-re-mi. I wanted to give you a nickname and I thought, I can think of a different one if you want. I suppose it is cute and it does match L over here, she teased, smiling at Edelgard, who huffed in response. Yes, because matching someone else is the most important thing in a nickname. Consistency is important, Edie. Isn't that right, Biley? Byleth felt her chest thump again. Probably a bad sign, but also she was feeling really warm and happy at the moment, so she was going to deal with that later. Why yes, it is, Dory. No, Do was cuter. Ah, Doro. You don't need to keep trying, Edelgard commented, faintly annoyed now. But I want to get it right. Why not Thea then? No, then she could get confused with Lysithea. Also, I would have to start calling you Guard, and that isn't a cute nickname at all. Edelgard pinched the bridge of her nose while Dorothea giggled, before the songstress gave Byleth a peck on the cheek. Thank you for trying your best. Why Yuri welcome, she murmured, her face red. Shaking her head a bit, she placed the wrapped packages on the desk. Here, I didn't want to leave without giving you two these. Grabbing the one that had her name on it, Edelgard began to open it as Dorothea did the same for hers. The two quickly saw what was inside, two armored bear plus highs, though one had a red cape sewn on its shoulder while the other had a hat sewn onto its head. wanted to give these earlier, but, well, Yuri said it could be taken as an insult. Sorry if the sewing isn't that great. How in the world could it? No, I suppose I can see how I would have reacted earlier to receiving a gift like this, Edelgard admitted, staring at her white bear while Dorothea let out a delighted noise at the sight of her own cute little brown bear with a hat just like the one she wore at the monastery perched on its head. Oh Bailey, I love it. Thank you so much. Yes, they're quite nice, Edelgard couldn't help but smirk. To think the Adrestian Emperor would be touched by such a simple gift. I wonder what others might think. Well, I suppose the benefit of walking down the flowery path of evil is not caring what others think, Byleth commented, a little playful smile coming to her face too. That is true. Yet I find myself caring what you think. I suppose I'll need to find an appropriate gift in return, Lady Archbishop. Sadly, all I can offer right now is a promise to fight the stars with you, should they ever deign to cross swords with us. Staying quiet, Dorothea watched, wondering when the two had become so romantic. I guess the blue sea star will stand no chance against the two of us. And there shall be nothing remaining to deny our future. Quite devious, my Lady Archbishop. I just hope I can match you, my villainous emperor. Wow. Byleth stiffened, startled for a second as she remembered Dorothea was in the room. No, keep going, that was wonderful. Dorothea insisted with an eager smile, oh, I feel like I should be taking notes or something, do you mind? It's just, I know I'm not really a playwright, but even I know this is just excellent. Well, Byleth glanced at Edelgard, who gave her a considering look. Well, Lady Archbishop? Should we give our friend more material to work with? Byleth cleared her throat, trying to fight down the blush that was threatening to spread across her face, before she let out a slow breath. I think, if we allow this to go further, my people might come looking for me. And I don't think I can handle getting walked in on twice in one day. So, for now, why don't we just promise to see each other again? A promise then. You and I will see each other once more. Edelgard leaned close, lowering her voice yet still letting it carry quite audibly as she whispered. And next time, I intend to fully stake my claim. Blushing heavily, Byleth moved back and gave Dorothea a quick kiss goodbye, then did the same for Edelgard. Or at least she attempted to. Edelgard, however, had a different idea as she captured Byleth's chin in one hand and pulled her into a deeper kiss. By the time she broke the kiss, all Byleth could do was leave in a daze. Well, I suppose that's my cue, Dorothea said, as she walked over to Edelgard, before giving her a kiss as well. Here's hoping you'll properly join in next time we meet. I suppose we'll see what the future. Just say yes if you want to. You could at least allow me to play the tease for once, she complained, before returning Dorothea's kiss and with it, making an implicit promise. It wasn't exactly how she expected the Archbishop's visit to go, but Edelgard had to admit, she was happy with this outcome. Byleth's face still felt a little warm as she made her way back to the carriages. She had to admit though, her visit went much better than she ever would have hoped. Reconnecting with Edelgard was one thing, actually pursuing a romance with her. Just the thought was making her chest pulse in that weird way again, which still probably wasn't a good thing, she really should get that checked out. Thankfully, it stopped a moment later. Less thankfully, it was because she saw a certain purple-haired general hanging out beside her carriage. Shay? What are you doing here? And why are you sitting on my luggage? Why do you think, her self-proclaimed rival asked, I'm coming with you? No you're not. Yeah, I am. I was assigned to by Edelgard and I've got papers, so don't try to argue this. I'm pretty sure I can argue it, since I'm the Archbishop and that's my carriage, she pointed out, some annoyance seeping into her tone. She held up 2 fingers. I work for the Emperor, and I can ride in a different carriage. Or on a horse, I guess, Shay mused, considering the idea. Either way, I got an important job to do. And what job is important enough for Edelgard to assign a general to it? Bodyguard duty, duh. I don't need you as my bodyguard. I'm stronger than you. So Dorothea, are you ready to go? Shay decided to ask, as she glanced behind Byleth. That I am. The songstress said, wrapping an arm around Byleth. Heh, I hope my bodyguard isn't cause you trouble, Biley. W.H. Watt. D. Dorothea, what are you doing here? Well, I am supposed to be a liaison, right? Dorothea asked, before giving her a mock pout. Also, I thought I was due. You're calling her due. Shay spoke up, her eyebrow raised. That's a terrible nickname. Byleth slumped, prompting an actual frown from Dorothea. Hey, I think it's cute. Don't be mean, Shezzy. Bleh. So which carriage are we taking anyways? Because I'd rather not spend the whole trip with By there. Humph. I think I'll be spending my time with Biley, actually, Dorothea said, hooking her arm through Byleth's and making her perk up slightly. I'm sure you can figure something out, Shezzy. Sure, I can probably just run behind the carriage. Shay said, not really bothered by that idea. Well, I can see that this is going to be a dishater, Byleth said, getting Dorothea to groan. Fuck you, that wasn't even funny. Shay on the other hand was trembling, clearly trying not to laugh. Well, at least someone appreciated her jokes. The trip back to the monastery sadly wasn't as private as Byleth wished, as while she did get to sit with Dorothea, Constance, and Yuri were also sitting inside with them. A part of her felt bad for making Balthus and Happy sit outside, but Balthus didn't seem to mind, while Happy decided to laze on top of the carriage thanks to how warm it was. Shay, meanwhile, was actually keeping up on foot, which was pretty impressive. So, how are you feeling, Lady Byleth? Constance asked as the carriage was part way through the Okama Mountains. I understand that you are having some health problems. Oh, yeah, I've been doing okay, but you know how Rhea is. Overreacts to compensate for your underreacting, Yuri noted. I react normally. You really don't. Dorothea cut in, making Byleth blush. Well, for now we should think of any problems you might be facing, Constance said, thankfully giving Byleth an out. Well, I sometimes feel nauseous, and my chest feels like it's throbbing at times. I see. Oh, I just remembered, Happy and Balthus mentioned that during the battle in Inver, your hair ended up turning blue. What? Oh. That reminds me. That happened when you passed out in HRYM. Dorothea said, as she sat up straight. I forgot because of how hectic things got, you know, having to cling onto a dragon and all, but your hair looked blue when you were on the ground. That. Byleth looked at her still green hair. My hair was blue before all of this. Is that, what could this mean? Could you be losing your connection to the goddess? Yuri suggested, prompting a scoff from Constance. One does not just lose divinity, Yuri. It is not a title you can merely take away at a whim, it is an innate quality. I mean, I gained this ability, it's not really natural to me, Byleth pointed out, before pressing a hand to her chest. If this was her losing her connection to Suthies, what did that mean for her? What did it mean for Suthies? Was she going to be okay? Chapter 44, Interlude, The Aftermath of Agartha. The Imperial Palace of Inver had multiple floors to its dungeons. It was reasonable, given that there were different types of prisoners that might be held there. The uppermost floor was originally for noble prisoners who could not be handled roughly for political reasons. Those with connections and relatives who would react poorly to ill treatment, or happened to be members of the royal family who had made some ill-advised decisions and needed what was effectively a timeout. They were still cells, but they were well lit, well furnished, and the guards weren't about to violently beat anyone unless they were exceptionally stupid. The cells beneath were no longer in use. Bad memories ensured they were sealed off entirely, better off forgotten for the cruelties inflicted within their depths, where the blood of princes and princesses still crusted the ground. So that meant Kronia happened to be in a rather nice cell for an Agarthan infiltrator. Not that she really appreciated it, since the room being well lit was actually more unpleasant to her eyes than if it'd been pitch black. Especially since it still felt cool in the cells. Not like if she was actually out in the sun. Ah, Lord Vestra, I see you've come for, hey, where are you going? Kronia paused in her thoughts, opening her eyes at the sound of the old guy in the cell next to hers speaking up. She sat up in her bed and looked through the bars to see that bitch Emperor's lackey was back. I'm surprised. I didn't take you for the type that would laze in bed, Hubert spoke, his voice cold and menacing as he regarded the assassin that tried to take Her Majesty's life. FFH. What did you think I'd be doing? Push UPS? Something of the sort. Your type tends to fall back on physical activity when you lack direction. Yeah, well, I don't feel like it. She hadn't since the fell star showed up. Just the thought sent a shiver through her that she tried to fight down. Hubert noticed, because obviously he would, but he chose not to say anything for the moment, instead regarding the shaken woman stuck in her cell. You should know that we have already destroyed Shamhala. Kronia went rigid, before a slow, pained breath made its way out of her lungs. So you wanna brag? Is that it? Fuck you. Not at all. I want to make your situation clear to you. Thales is dead at the hands of Her Majesty, Emperor Edelgard. His own foolish decision regarding the towers placed around Shamhala, She glanced up at him, then let out a little huff. They're called Viscom. He noted her willingness to answer the implicit question. He didn't smile, not yet, but it was a good sign. The Viscom, then. He chose to use them to their full effect, from what I can tell, and they went out of control. Thales wouldn't be that stupid. He wasn't. The Archbishop, Lady Eisner, suggested that we strike at specific points in order to deactivate these devices. When our troops arrived, however, they found the devices were broken outright, and the Viscom could not be deactivated. So they overloaded and exploded, ruining the city, though we do intend to excavate as best we can going forward. Kronia was barely listening. Not after one very important part of Hubert's statement. What do you mean they were sabotaged? I mean, as I said. Your city seems to have been sabotaged. Perhaps by an insider who thought Thales's efforts were doomed to fail. Her mind went back to the Fell Star's words. That Solon would gladly sacrifice a failure. That Thales would sooner destroy them all than back down. So what does that mean? Why are you telling me this? It means there are almost certainly enemy Agarthans still out there. We have taken prisoners from your city and we will have to decide what to do with each of them, but I feel you would be a good starting point. She eyed him warily. The hell does that mean? Do you know why Emperor Edelgard intended to start a war with the Central Church? Kronia blinked. Because she hates the church like we do. Not like you do. You're indoctrinated and barely know why you're fighting anyone, much less the major political structures of Fodlan. She grimaced, but interrupting wouldn't get her anything, so she let him continue. The church is a stagnant institution that upholds the ruinous systems of Fodlan's nations. Without its authority to justify the nobility, it is far easier to tear down their standing. Faerghus itself requires the church to justify its existence. Without it, they are merely a rebellious state of the empire. And that means war can be waged against it for that simple reason. Yet those are not Emperor Edelgard's only reasons for seeking this conflict. War can win glory, and there is nothing that entices nobility more than the prospect of glory. So a war that could send nobles out to win glory, to fight and die on the battlefield, that could be used to remove problematic elements on all sides. Hubert sighed. Unfortunately, Lady Eisner turned out to be a reasonable individual and Emperor Edelgard doesn't want to kill her now. So while we can work hand in hand with the church in the spirit of friendship and harmony, that means a number of annoyances are not going out and getting conveniently killed. He smirked. However, if there were still a dangerous cult active within Adrestia, known as those who slither in the dark, that happened to remove a few of those elements for us. Hold on. You want me to be your assassin? Kronia asked, audibly skeptical at the offer. Not at all. I want a rogue element that has no association with me to do the dirty work even I cannot be seen doing. Something that can spread fear through the nobility that fails to fall in line with Her Majesty. Won't it look bad for your emperor if you have one of us skitterers killing people? It would be slitherer, not skitterer. And there are ways to keep the populace happy and the emperor free of blame while these issues are being handled. One thing to do is ensure only certain individuals are targeted as retribution for a betrayal, shall we say. I intend to let it be known that those who slither in the dark were unveiled due to the aid of a noble willing to turn against their corrupt fellows. or perhaps a commoner who couldn't stomach their employer's treacherous actions. Whichever would suit Her Majesty's needs better, of course. So I'm supposed to be some remnant that's getting revenge on the people that sold us out? Or didn't help us, or what? You have the correct idea. Hubert smirked, leaning against the bars. And, in exchange, you will not only have the freedom to leave this cell on your assignments, but you can earn leniency for your fellow Agarthans. Yeah, I don't give a shit about those people. Do I get something nicer for me? You will be granted further amenities and privileges with each successful assignment. Kronia grinned, feeling a familiar bloodlust starting to grow in her. Now you're speaking my language. I thought I might be. And, well, if ever the Archbishop becomes a problem. Am I allowed to say no to assignments that are guaranteed to kill me? Kronia immediately asked. He sighed. We can negotiate the terms later, though I do expect some aid if ever the Archbishop does turn against us. And, as an added incentive, I will not kill you if you happen to fail and make it back alive. Kronia blinked. Okay, that actually is better than my last job. So, for my first job, want me to kill the old guy eavesdropping on us in the next cell over? You mean the former Duke Agir? Hubert asked, audibly amused as he ignored the faintly startled noise from the next cell over. No, his son wants to do something legal with him, and he would be annoying if we just had Ludwig stabbed to death in his cell. Though if he happened to give us some information about other corrupt nobles we could actually use, perhaps I could see to it that he's exiled to a decent enough island rather than executed or imprisoned for life. Huh. That's more merciful than I expected from you, Kronia noted, ignoring the scoff from the other cell. You may not realize it, Kronia, but I have always been willing to take steps that Emperor Edelgard should never take. She is an emperor, and thus she must be unimpeachable. I, however, am willing to do anything to secure her safety, her happiness, and her continued power. If I must perform actions others would consider immoral or dangerous, I will do so without hesitation. What, are you in love with her or something? She asked, frowning up at him. I do love her, he bluntly admitted, though not in the way you think. I have chosen to devote my life to her. Her ambitions and goals matter more to me than my own life. They certainly matter to me more than anyone else's. Heh. So, what about the prissy princess made you want to devote yourself to her, huh? Hubert ignored the half-hearted insult and allowed himself a small smile at how obviously interested Kronia was. Duty, at first. I was raised with the knowledge that my house, House Vestra, was meant to serve House Hresvelg in all manners necessary to secure their continued reign. And out of all the children of House Hresvelg that lived at the time, it was decided I would be Lady Edelgard's vassal. It was said her father did genuinely love her mother, so perhaps it was a sort of favoritism. Regardless, it was my duty, and I held to it. And then she disappeared, stolen away where I could not find her. And when she returned, she was different. Altered from the experiments Thales put her through, yet also containing a fire that could not be smothered, a drive to see the world changed to suit her version. He allowed his smile to grow. By that time, I was already devoted. All that moment truly gave me was an assurance that my duty, my purpose, mattered more to me than life itself. And I doubt Agartha ever truly gave you that. Kronia blinked, his words pulling her back from the story that had been drawing her in, but before she could say anything, he continued. I will not doubt your reasons. You were told of beasts that had stolen your ancestors' homeland, abominations that ruled them, and a monstrosity that made it all possible. Correct me if I speak false, but I can only imagine they fed you scraps of approval. No, perhaps less than that. Half-hearted promises that one day, as long as you acted perfectly and never once made the slightest mistake, they would deign to show you the smallest affection. A meager pat on the head as they basked in the world that you won for them. They opened their caves and showed you the sun as though it were a gift they were giving you and not something you should have by simple virtue of humanity, also you would not question that the monsters kept you in that cave, never once wondering if the men claiming to be your masters were the ones holding you prisoner all along. That's pretty hypocritical, she muttered, her eyes flicking to the bars between them. Is it? You are held here because of your actions. It is a consequence of your choices. You were held down there because of your birth. Because the leaders of your people decided they would rather live in darkness to spite those above than risk letting their hate die. 1,000 years of spite and rage is not impressive. It's pathetic. She didn't bother arguing. It's not like she really believed in the cause to begin with. Did she really just want Thales's approval? Was that all she wanted? Why tell me all this? Because you strike me as someone who wishes for a purpose. Someone who wants a cause beyond being an unthinking assassin, to give her life meaning. Someone who had already been broken down by the Archbishop, and thus would be easy to build back up. She scoffed after a moment, pretending at derision. Not sure where you got that idea. I'm a self-centered bitch, only in it for myself. I can work with that too, he replied, unbothered. Why would he be? She was plainly lying at this point. As long as you are willing to follow as needed, you and I will have no issues. Though, before I go. Kronya raised an eyebrow as Hubert reached into a coat pocket, briefly wondering if this was all just build up to him stabbing her to death. She'd be impressed by the sadism and commitment, if nothing else, but then he pulled out a key and tossed it to her. She caught it easily and glanced up at him, confused. What, is this for my cell? No, you'll have to earn that key. That key is for your monocles, including the ones binding your tails. Consider it a sign of trust. He smirked. Try not to waste it. She stared after him as he left, craning her head to watch him walk as much as she could, before settling back with a faint huh. She studied the key, then, with a bit of effort, worked it into the cuffs binding her wrists. With a click, they were let free. Huh. For a brief second, she wondered if she could get out, before shaking that idea off as stupid. Shamhala was gone, Thales was dead, and even if neither of those things were true, her superiors probably kill her anyway for fucking up again. So fuck 'em, they could rot for all she cared. Ah, young lady, perhaps you and I have something to talk about. You see, I am a man of great influence. Fuck off, I'm not interested, she called out, banging on the wall beside her so the old guy would shut up. Stupid jackass, thinking he can buy me. Annoying assholes aside, Kronya actually felt herself genuinely smile for the first time in a while as she let her tails free. Maybe working for Tall, Dark, and Chatty wouldn't be so bad. Couldn't be worse than her last batch of bosses. Hell, odds were those pricks were out there whining over some stupid inconvenience. Gods, it's fucking cold out, Bias complained, pulling her black cloak tighter around herself in an attempt to stave off the ever-present chill that seemed to permeate Faerghus. It didn't help that they were waiting outside some random abandoned fort. Why are you complaining? Your specialty is fire magic, just warm yourself up, Pittacus pointed out, frowning at her sister from under her own hooded cloak. That doesn't change the fact that it's freezing and we're just hanging out here waiting for that bitch to show up. Pittacus sighed. Try to avoid insulting Cleobulus when she does arrive. It would be extremely inconvenient if we had to fight an internal war while on the run from the beasts. Feh. If her skin's that thin, I'm shocked she survived even a second in Frostbite Land. Pittacus rolled her eyes, before glancing at her sister again. You know, you would likely be less cold if you were not sitting upon a metal container. Well, where else am I supposed to sit? Besides, this thing's warmer than you'd think, Bias retorted, casually patting the crest of flames marked on the casket containing the King of Liberation. At the very least, I know my ass isn't going to freeze. Ugh. Could you please be less crude? Cease your incessant whining, the both of you, Solon interrupted as he exited the fort, his annoyance obvious. If you are truly so bereft of activity that you spend your time bickering, I will gladly assign you chores to do. Bias grimaced. We're not your little assistants any. We'll be good, mentor, Pittacus interrupted, bowing her head to Solon. Bias huffed in audible annoyance, but inclined her head as well in a slightly less deferential show of respect. If you wish for me to treat you as adults, act like it, he reprimanded anyway, uncaring for their excuses as he stepped forward, staring out into the distance. Ready yourselves. We are being approached. The sisters moved to flank their mentor, watching as a group of knights approached. Their pale armor seemed to almost disappear into the snow, though the blue lining kept them visible while they flanked the woman covered in a furred cloak. Her own clothes stood out starkly in the snow, the dark fuchsia of her gown and her similarly dyed cloak signaling a degree of wealth that a fair share of Faerghus nobility couldn't boast. Not that Solon particularly cared about that. "You are late." Cleobulus, wearing the guise of the mage Cornelia Arnhem, stared at her fellow sage for a good few seconds before throwing her head back and laughing outright. "Ah ha 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 ha. Gods and sages, you truly haven't changed one iota, have you, Solon? You lose the last bastion of our entire people and you still have the temerity to act so arrogantly? It's a wonder you of all people managed to survive with that remarkable hubris of yours. Though I suppose if you fled at the first indication of things going wrong, that would explain it." "Humph. I am not so conceited that I would fight a battle I am guaranteed to lose. The Fell Star returned and led both Imperial and Church forces against us. Not only that, but the fact she even knew the location of Shamhala shows we were compromised to a degree I did not consider possible beforehand." He met Cleobulus's gaze unflinchingly. "You are lucky I chose to retreat. Otherwise, you would have no concept of the existential threat we face. I think I would have a good idea when reports of Shamhala's destruction reached my ears," she pointed out, unimpressed. "I would have thought our defenses would stave off any invader, especially when backed by the greatest of the sages. And yet, Thales gladly ordered Shamhala's destruction so our foes would be taken with him. I merely thought it prudent to take the most valuable of our assets with us when we left." "Meaning yourself and your children," Cleobulus stated, unimpressed as she glanced over Bias and Pittacus. "Myself, my apprentices, and the King of Liberation, yes." That made her pause. "You brought the corpse of that bandit with you." "Who says he is a corpse?" Solon smirked. "The Liberation King was too useful of a weapon to merely discard. Though it took time for the revitalization project to run its course, I am confident that Nemesis shall once again walk these tainted lands." "That is potentially very useful," Cleobulus allowed, her mind racing as she considered the variables now introduced by the so-called king's presence. "Using him would be a double-edged sword, one to be wielded carefully. What of the other elites? Were you able to bring them as well?" "Only some. They're being held elsewhere for now. I felt it prudent to not have all who escaped with us waiting here," Solon explained, as he examined Cleobulus, wanting to see her reaction. "Well, it seems continuing this conversation in the cold would be a poor idea. Perhaps we should return to my abode to continue," Cleobulus offered, making Solon smile. It was so much better when people chose to be cooperative, rather than argue every step of the way. "I would be glad to," he agreed, nodding to the lesser sage before he turned to his apprentices. "Bring the container with you. I won't have it lost in the snow due to simple ineptitude." With that, he placed a hand on the flank of Cleobulus's horse, earning an unamused frown from the sorceress before she warped the three of them back to her current abode. Bias glanced at her sister. "He doesn't mean we should actually carry that thing, right?" "Ah, no, of course not. We can just warp with it," Pittacus responded. "Right, we can, but where are we supposed to go? We don't know where Cleobulus is staying." Pittacus felt a frown coming onto her face. "We also need to find everyone else to let them know where we're going." "Fucking sages, Solon is an asshole," Bias groaned as she moved over, grabbing one end of the casket. "How pissed do you think he'd be if we just left this here and went off on our own?" "Bias, don't talk like that," Pittacus complained as she moved over to grab the other side. "We'll be marked as traitors." "Let me complain. Besides, it's not like he has the forces to send people after us," Bias huffed, before the two lifted the casket, ready to begin trudging after their master. Damn it, this is heavy." "Don't complain." Wait, we could ask one of those knights to." Pittacus paused, realizing the escort Cleobulus had brought with her were already riding off in the opposite direction. "Oh. Well, at least we can follow them." "Pitt, please stop wasting oxygen, your arms will give out." "Right." Chapter 45, The Return Home. It should be strange how much Garreg Mach felt like home to Byleth at this point, given that she'd technically only spent less than 3 years there, counting her past life. But then, it made sense too. She'd been born there, her family all came from the monastery, and it was the first place she felt genuinely happy. With all that in mind, it was only natural that she felt a warm, fuzzy feeling when the carriage came to a stop and she stepped out onto the streets of her home once more. She still wished she'd spent a little more time back in the Empire, maybe even spent some time touring the territories on the way to Faerghus, but coming back to Garreg Mach wasn't a bad thing either. Byleth. Especially since a familiar green-haired girl came running up to her, immediately hugging the Archbishop. Flayn, I'm glad to see you're well. She really was, a bright smile on her face as she hugged her back. Of course I am. I want to hear about everything that happened. I know you're excited, Flayn, but you really shouldn't hug the Archbishop, Seath gently chided, even if he had a small smile on his face. Oh, don't listen to him, Byleth, he was far more worried than I was, Flayn said, with a smirk on her face, before she noticed Dorothea. Oh, hello. You were one of the students here, were you not? That I was, I'm glad you remembered. My name is Dorothea Arnault, at your service, she greeted as she curtsied. And to what do we owe the pleasure of your visit, Miss Arnault? Seath asked. Ah, well, Dorothea is officially the liaison between the Church and the Empire, Byleth started, before the songstress pulled her in close. Unofficially, I'm one of Byleth's girlfriends. Girlfriend? Flayn gasped in excitement. One of? Seath exclaimed in a mix of shock and exasperation, Byleth, please do not tell me you are dating multiple women at once. Seath, in the spirit of honesty, I will not lie to you. You're not even going to try for an excuse, huh? I just said I won't lie to you. Come now, brother, Flayn said, patting Seath's side, you need not give your garland to only one person, as it's said. Oh? Who says that? Dorothea asked, curious. Oh, you know, the youth. Flayn deflected, before clearing her throat. Is your other girlfriend here? Ah, no, she, couldn't come along on account that she's, the Emperor. Seath pinched the bridge of his nose, before walking away. If Rhea needs to find me, I shall be in my office. Byleth glanced at Flayn, whose eyes appeared to be sparkling. Do you want to hear about my visit? Yes, I want to hear all about your romance. Byleth couldn't help but feel a bit flustered at how eager Flayn was. Thankfully, someone came to distract her. Whoa, that was a good workout. Shay said, breathing heavily as she ran up to the group. Hey guys, is everything good? Oh, you're the mercenary who saved the house leaders, are you not? Flayn asked. Oh, you have a little sister, Byleth. Ah, Flayn isn't my sister, she's Seath's sister. She's more like my cousin, Byleth explained, before frowning. Wait, didn't you meet her before? Did I? I was kinda only here for a month, so I don't remember most people who weren't in the Black Eagles. Shay shrugged. I know there's Dimitri and Claude, but can't say much for everyone else. Really? You don't remember anyone? Hey, I only talked to most of them once, maybe twice. I can kinda remember the people I fought in the mock battle, like, no, I remember Ash, yeah, he's one, and so's, no, Casper's in the Eagles, oh, there's Lawrence and Leonie, they've got similar names. Is that how you remember them? It makes sense, doesn't it? And like, she's purple and he's orange, right? Shay paused at Byleth's raised eyebrow. The opposite? Yeah, the opposite, oh yeah, there's also Hilda. She was there. And, she's pink, right? I'm not getting her confused with that Mary girl. Byleth paused, picturing Marianne with pink hair, before she shook that thought off. Do you just think of people in terms of colors? Hey, it's easier than trying to remember all their names. Nobles have way too many of those to begin with, it's always Fancy Von Spectacular or they have 3 or 4 for some reason. One name works just fine. Oh, I completely agree. Flayn agreed, nodding with a bright smile. I suppose I can understand that a bit, Byleth allowed. For a long time, people thought I was just Byleth instead of Byleth Eisner even though Geralt is around. Of course then there were some people that were surprised we're related. I would have been surprised if I hadn't heard about you ahead of time, Shay admitted, you two don't look anything alike. I take after my mother. Oh, you heard about Byleth before her visit? Flame asked. Huh? Nah, I heard about her way before then, back when I was still a merc. The two of us actually fought before. Flame blinked, before eyeing Shay a little more warily. You did? But, you're friends now, right? No way I'm friends with her. We might have worked together, but I still wanna kick her ass. Flame moved in front of Byleth protectively. Enemy. Biley, your family is adorable. That prompted everyone to look at Dorothea, including a confused Shay. Oh hey Dorothea. Were you here the whole time? Shay, you said hi to me. I said hi to everybody, covers my bases. You should at least make sure to pay attention to Dorothea, Byleth pointed out, you are supposed to be her bodyguard. Yeah, but we're at the monastery. Or what, are you going to tell me the monastery isn't safe after we got rid of Tamash? Well, it's safer at least. No need to tell her about Eelfric. Either way, it's been a long trip. We should get something to eat. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, I worked up an appetite, Shay agreed as the group began to walk to the mess hall. Though as they walked, they ended up walking rather slowly as several people came by to greet the returning archbishop. Byleth didn't mind it that much, she had grown accustomed to the people of the monastery, but she couldn't help but notice how Dorothea wasn't holding on to her anymore. Not that it was surprising, since she was supposed to be the archbishop. Though, she also couldn't help but smile whenever the backs of their hands brushed up against one another. Sighing as she finished writing the letters to the Alliance and Kingdom, Byleth leaned back in her chair after she handed them off to Seath. I suppose I'm glad that you took initiative with this, the Chamberlain said, checking the letters to make sure they looked good, before sealing them in envelopes. Even if Rhea would likely want to do all of this work right now. Don't remind me. If Rhea and Gerald had their way, I'd be grounded in my room until they figured out how to deal with my crest. Grounded might not be the most accurate word, though you likely wouldn't be allowed out of the monastery, Seath admitted. I would be the same if what was happening to you happened to Flame. Like you allow Flame out of the monastery as is. I do, I just make sure I'm escorting her when she does, he argued with a frown. Still, it is a good idea for you to take it easy. I know, but I still need to figure out what to do. As is, even if my crest stone doesn't break, there's a chance I might lose my blessing in the future. I would think that wouldn't matter to you. Normally it wouldn't. However, I'm an archbishop who wants to promote views and ideas that go against what the church has been preaching for a millennia. Imagine how it'll look if one day I pass out and my hair turns blue because I lost the favor of the goddess. I suppose I can understand where you're coming from. Some of the more devout members of the church would likely call for your exile, if not worse. Seath let out a weary sigh. Even with Rhea backing you up, it would cause quite the rift in the clergy. Exactly, so we either have to figure out how to fix my stone, or speed things along so we can fix things before I lose these powers. Could probably use that offer to fake my death if necessary, Byleth mused. Why don't we focus on the first issue? Oh, yeah, that's the plan. Just gotta remember what Lakendek is hiding in. And why are you looking for him? Because maybe he has an idea of how to help. She shrugged, frowning. At this point, he's the only other living Nabatean I know how to find. At the very least he's easier to find than Makul. Assuming Windcaller is even alive. Windcaller. I would have thought you knew about him as well. Byleth gave him a flat look. Seath, just because I'm from the future doesn't mean I know everything. He is another of our brethren who lost his ability to change forms. He chose to lose himself in his anger, and left after the war. Last I heard he traveled north of what is now Edmund territory towards Srang. So dash. We are not using your trip into the kingdom as an excuse to go into Srang. Well, that's probably for the best, actually, considering the last you heard is probably 1,000 years out of date. Seath opened his mouth to reply, then closed it with a begrudging huff. Anyways, aside from that, Hanuman will be arriving soon, hopefully, and he knows more about crests than anyone else. We'll also need to wait for responses from the nations, but we don't need to worry there. I mean, even if they get annoyed because I'm favoring the Empire, Byleth ignored Seath, rolling his eyes. Marianne and Lawrence will vouch for me since we're friends. Ingrid and Sylvain will probably smooth things over, and if they can't, well, the kingdom sent me a dagger. Actually, thinking about it, I could maybe use those incidents when they were here to help move things forward when I visit. The kingdom will be pretty difficult to change with how much weight they give crests. Not to mention I really don't know what beliefs Dimitri has, so strong-arming him might be needed. You know, you could afford to be a little more circumspect, Seath chided, frowning, openly suggesting strong-arming the king of Faerghus makes you sound like a bandit. No, it makes me sound like a mercenary, which I was. There's a difference, Byleth argued with a frown, besides I'm not openly suggesting anything, it's just the two of us. That doesn't make it better. Even then, I'm surprised you of people would suggest such a thing. Well, what can I say? Time changes people. She was supposed to be the archbishop that walked down the path of evil, after all. If it helped fix things, well, it was better than fighting for a good that she didn't believe in. Try not to become too ruthless, at the very least, he replied. Judging from his tone, he didn't believe she could be. But she remembered. She'd done much worse than try to intimidate some king into doing what she wanted. For now, focus on resting. And try not to be too aggressive when you inevitably do interact with King Dimitri. I'm not going to be aggressive. I'm just going to stand my ground. If nothing else, the alliance should be easier to deal with in comparison. So, how was your trip? Catherine asked Shamir, foregoing any greeting as she sat down next to the archer at a tavern. More work than I expected. So what you're saying is you should have stayed. Or you could have come along. At least I would have been there to help Lady Rhea. Right, Shamir sighed, as she took a drink. So how were things while we were gone? Quiet. Flane's been having fun with her class. You should have seen how stressed Seath was when Rhea left so quickly. As if you weren't. At least I wasn't the one left in charge, Catherine shot back before she took a swig from her own mug. Speaking of leaving, apparently Gerald was sent to the Alliance to get one of the former students. Well, at least I won't have to hear him and Rhea bickering. Not that they had been arguing lately. I'm a little surprised Byleth let him go though. I wouldn't say she's dependent, but it seems like she prefers to keep him close by. From what I heard, she's the one who told him to go. Not sure why she wants that Pinelli girl around here, but who knows, maybe it's another vision from the goddess. Shamir considered that, taking a drink. I have to say, it's weird hearing you be so skeptical about your own goddess. Hey, I'm not doubting the goddess, I'm doubting the prophet, all right. A prophet speaks for their god, so most would say it's the same thing. Yeah, well, I'm here for Lady Rhea, not any other archbishop. Catherine sighed. So, you going to the kingdom when she goes? Maybe, depends on how cold it is. It's always cold up there, though if you don't like it that much I'd recommend visiting Ifan, it's got some great spirits. I'll show you around one day. The place with the apples. That is what it's known for, yup. The cider's good. Catherine hummed, staring off into the distance. It's kind of funny, House Ifan is a major house of Faerghus, descended from Lug himself and probably one of the richer houses up there, but they really don't distinguish themselves all that much. Hell, ask someone around here and they'd probably get it confused with House Itha. What's that one? Well, it's technically a sort of subsidiary house. The territory goes to the direct relatives of the royal family, like a second son or sister. So if King Dimitri has 2 kids, the second-born would get Itha. Provided the firstborn has the crest of Bladdid. Sounds complicated. Yeah, but nobles always tend to be. Wasn't there that one noble who tried to get you to stay by force because she was into you? Don't remind me. She set her drink down, feeling annoyed now. Hopefully she wouldn't have to deal with any clingy clients from her past, but the threat was still in the back of her head and it was bringing down her mood. Ah well. At least she had something like a date to look forward to whenever she and Catherine went to Faerghus next. Rhea knew fear. She felt fear when her people were slaughtered, and fear as she tried to guide humanity as best she could. Some nights she would lie in bed, worrying if humanity would one day come to finish the job. However, this was always fear towards what could happen to her. Fear of what could happen to Byleth outweighed the millennia she felt before. It was strange. Or, no, it wasn't strange. The part that felt strange was that she'd never felt as worried when it came to her remaining family, to Seath and Flayn as they were now known. She still felt a faint concern, but they were at the monastery, safe with her, and she knew they were capable. She fought alongside them. There was a sense that they could be safe without her, especially with how intent Seath was on protecting his daughter. But Byleth, Rhea knew it was irrational, but it felt like Byleth needed her. Despite how strong she could be, despite how much stronger she was getting, she was still fragile. The pain she had in her heart was still present, even if her time in Inbar had soothed some of the aches. And that thought brought her mind to the true source of her fears. The issue with Byleth's heart. She should have known there would be an issue at some point. There always was with all of her daughters. A point where their health started failing, where the power of the goddess started to burn in the form of fevers and illness. Why would it be different for Byleth? Why did she dare to hope? She shook that thought off and breathed in the night air from atop the star terrace. She wasn't going to lose another child. She'd do whatever it took, so that they could live together in peace. Even if it meant working with that thug calling herself an emperor. She glanced down, at the monastery below her. It was a place of safety to her, yet it was also a cage. One she desperately wished she could convince Byleth to stay in, yet she knew that wasn't possible. For all its luster, it would be nothing but a gilded cage for someone like her. Gareg Mach had always been a comfort to Rhea, a familiar constant in a life of lingering pain and loss. She could always count on it to exist, the one thing in her life she knew to be true, and while the bars of her cage provided a sense of security to her, she knew it would only constrain Byleth. She was the type who wanted to fly free, to see the sky and travel as far as she could. She might come to love the monastery as a home too, in time, but would she want to settle here? Somewhere she knew she would always have eyes on her, wishing to see the grace of the goddess made manifest. To listen to the will of the archbishop. Rhea let out a slow sigh. She just wanted Byleth to be safe. She knew the child was not her own, not in blood at the very least, but she had to imagine this is what it would have felt like if she'd allowed herself to love her creations the way she should have. It wasn't unusual for a parent to bury their child, for the world was often cruel. She couldn't let that happen here though. Not when she could fix things. And she would fix things. One way or another, she would make sure Byleth could spread her wings as she wished. What would your wings look like, child? She murmured under her breath, her eyes drifting towards the starry night sky overhead. Perhaps if she could change, For a brief moment, she imagined a pair of dragons, flying freely in the sky. And then she let herself dwell on that image. It was something she found she wanted. She wanted it more than anything. Check the description for the links to the author.